Hi, friends. Welcome to the session. This is your sort of like stuff to be doing, not thinking about, but doing as we roll into these early deadlines. So this is sort of like Tom and I were talking last week, and we were like, hey, what would be something that would be really useful and timely and practical? That's what this session is about. I'm Ethan. I'm your co-host, and this is Tom.
I'm your other co-host. Nice to be
We
here.
set that up. The check-in question today, if you're just joining us, is what is your favorite game? We have lots of favorite games. Tom mentioned Rummy. I mentioned Dominion. Feel free to let us know in the chat. Today's going to get real practical real fast. So here's what we're covering on the session. I'm going to be sharing, I said I was going to share 3 resources you can use to up-level your application. It's actually going to be more like 5, or you could argue 7. I'm going to spend like 10 minutes doing that. Then Tom is going to do what we're calling how do we name this? The quick and easy formatting hacks to make your admission officer's life much easier and less messy. Tom will know about that as a former admission officer. And then we're going to get into some practical ways to reduce stress as you go through the next couple of weeks. We're going to talk about how do you know if your personal statement's finished? How do you know if your application's doing its job, and what is its job anyway? And what if your application and essays just aren't ready by the early action or early decision deadlines? What do you do? And then, of course, Q&A throughout. Throw it into the chat, and we have a secret Google Doc behind the scenes where Ashley, our glorious moderator, that should be your title, new title, Ashley. I know that's making her laugh right now.
Glorious moderator.
Glorious moderator.
Got it at target.
Yes. We'll be throwing those questions onto the chat, and we'll get to those as soon as we can. We're going to try and do like 35 minutes of content and like hopefully 15, 20 minutes of Q&A. Will this be recorded? Somebody asked. This will be recorded, and you will get the recording. Before we get started, we're going to do our intros in just a second. I want to do some like quick PSAs. One of them is Tom and I have a little course that's coming up this Saturday. So in like not quite 48 hours, it's actually less than 48 hours. We're doing a little a mini course on how to stand out with common topics. So if you have an essay that you believe is a common topic and you're like, I think this could be better, join us. Students, we're also doing a counselor version. We'd love to have you there. We will throw a link into the chat in just a second. And a fun fact about this course, if you sign up while we are doing this live session right now, you can pay whatever you want for this course. So what am I talking about? Let me just show you real quick. I'm gonna do a quick screen share so y'all know what the heck I'm talking about. So here's this course, and it's in the chat right now. How to stand out with common personal statements. This is the student version. You click Save Me a Seat, and you click $97, one-time register. If this amount doesn't work for you, where's the pay what you can? Oh, darn. Actually, I'm messing up. Where's the pay what you can request? I'm totally messed up showing this to you all. Ashley will clarify it for me, and then I will clarify it for you all. But essentially, that's a fun thing we're doing this weekend. On the landing page, oh my gosh, I totally messed up. I failed. I wasn't supposed to click the button. Here's what I was supposed to show you. Thank you, Ashley. I'm sorry I screwed that up.
That was a rummy on the board moment. You got real excited.
On the board. This is the pay what you can course. Request a pay what you can spot.
Hey, can anyone hear me or? I don't know what happened to our audio. Can people hear me or no?
How about now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Let's see. Can't hear Ethan. Yes, Tom.
How about now?
Is Ethan back?
Wow, the chat is. I can hear both. Yes. I'm seeing lots of yeses. Oh, that was scary for a minute.
Hello, hello, hello. How about now?
Yes, 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 yes to both. Okay, I think we're both back in action. I don't know what happened there, but for a second I was like, I don't hear this guy.
We're good. We're good. All right, we're good. Thanks. All right. The third thing, in case you are a counselor and you want all the resources to learn about what happened at the national conference, is at the top of this doc, which we will share in the chat. You'll find an opt-in where you can basically get access to all of our NACAG takeaways. And it's basically just go to this link right here at the top, just put in your name and email and say that you're a counselor and you'll get access to that. I mean, students, you could technically do that too and just be like, yeah, I'm interested in these resources as well. And you can hear what we nerd out about at these conferences. All right. I'm going to go first and I'm going to introduce myself. And then Tom, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and then do your thing. How does that sound? All right. We hear everyone. Internet is weird. Ariana, if you can't hear me, refresh the page. But yes, also the internet is weird. All right. Here goes. So the first thing that I want to say, these are the sort of like most practical things that I could tell you to do. So the first thing I want you to do, or consider doing at least, is I want you to create an almost done document. Yes, you can do this literally while we are talking about it. So if you go to this link right here, let me share with you what this is. I want to encourage you all to do an almost done doc. Why do this? And this is, by the way, what this includes is your personal statement, your activities list, additional info, COVID additional info, if you have one, and your supplemental essays. And I want you to put it all on a single doc. Why? I think this is going to be a really good way for you to see what the college admission officer is going to see. So, for example, here's the personal statement, right? Scroll down, activities and awards list. Underneath that, additional info section, supplemental essay questions for whatever school you're applying to. Okay. The thing about that is that you're going to be like, and I'm going to get to this in just a little bit. This is going to help you see what everybody else is going to be seeing when they're looking at your application. It's also going to give you a sense of things that aren't done. Because if you do this and you're like, oh, wait, I don't have an activities and awards list, or mine doesn't quite look like this, then that could be some useful stuff to know. Okay. That's tip number one, is like create an almost done doc. And if you want, you can just take this doc that we have and then, you don't need to copy and paste it because it's going to be your own, but it's pretty simple. Personal statement, again, let me just show you what the elements are. Personal statement, activities list, additional info, and supplemental essays, all on one page. Okay. Tip number two, the next thing I would suggest doing is up-leveling the verbs in your activities list. What do I mean by this? So this is what your activities list is going to look like. You're going to have whatever the role is and the organization. And then look at this description. Planned meetings, recruited members, advocated for college readiness, provided information on college applications, part of a statewide honor society. Like there's so many good verbs in here: planned, recruited, advocated, provided. Like I look at that and I'm like, oh yeah, this student really did some stuff. So my advice is to up-level the verbs in your activities list. Now, you might be thinking, Ethan, come on, couldn't you just give us like a list of verbs that are like good verbs? And I might say to you, like, that would be lazy. Come on, find your own verbs, like do your own work. But that's not who I am. I actually am more like, yeah, actually, here's a list of verbs that you can use. So this is our epic list of activities list verbs. We're pretty proud of it, putting it in the chat. You can go through and also remember some of the stuff you did. So if you're like, I did leadership stuff, but you can't remember what, you can be like, did you coordinate something? Did you develop, evaluate, generate, improve? Get as specific as you can. And that's going to show a greater range of responsibilities and just a greater range of skills that you've developed. Okay. It should take you like, I don't know, hopefully 5 or 10 minutes to do that. If you want it, we have a complete guide to up-leveling your activities list. And I'll put that in the chat as well. We'll follow up with all the links. So no worries. No worries. The third thing I want to suggest that you do is go to your, so when you've created your almost done doc, go to your almost, let's see, go to your additional info section. By the way, if you're not able to somehow get onto the almost done doc that I shared, don't worry. It's because we have too many people on it. And Google is like, so this additional info section could in some cases be a big difference maker if you have context to share that you couldn't share elsewhere in your application. So for example, this is a student who tried to take college courses during the summer, but he couldn't afford the classes, and there was an issue regarding his residency. The student happened to be undocumented. So if you're like, there's some stuff that I'd like to explain, but I couldn't figure out how to explain it in my personal statement, this could be a good place to explain it. Another thing that this student, a challenge that the student faced, is they were the first student in their school to take the AP Physics 1 exam. Also, the test started late because the previous test ran long and the alarms went off. By the way, the students still passed. They were still proud of their score. So these kinds of details, not complaining, but explaining, can help give the reader a sense of, what you've been dealing with or going through in your school. Ashley, could we make our tiny little boxes just a little bit bigger boxes? That would be super awesome. There's not a ton we can do on this platform, but it does get just a little bit bigger. All right. So if there's stuff you could put there, go for it. You don't have to, but there might be something there. The other thing I want to have you just double check is there stuff that you could put in the COVID additional info section? Now, what do I mean by this? Well, some students have been through big challenges, but they're like, everybody went through challenges, which, yes, may be true. But it could be that in just a few bullet points, there we go, there are like, a specific challenge that you faced. It could be that you explain just briefly what you've done about it and what you've learned through the experience, okay? There's a whole guide. I'm not going to go through it right now. I'm just going to put it in the chat that you can use to explain COVID-related challenges. Or if you haven't faced challenges, but you feel like, you know what, there are certain values that I developed. One thing that you could do is you could focus on 1 to 2 values. Like maybe you became more adaptable, or you somehow enhanced your communication skills, or I don't know, maybe you became more committed to your health. This guide will walk you through how to put in just a little bit, again, bullet points that can help give some context for, your application. Tip number 5, I want you to scan your personal statement and answer these 4 questions, okay? Now, this kind of splits into 2 different, let me stop sharing my screen for a second. Some students are writing about challenges and some students are not. Let's assume for just a minute that you're not writing about challenges in your application. So if you're not writing about challenges, here are 4 questions to ask, and I'm going to put them in the chat. Number 1, is it clear what your topic is? So you can actually go, once you've created your Almost Done doc, and read through and be like, could I name what my topic is in just a few words? For example, my topic is about how, I'm looking at games again, how this game, like Trivial Pursuit, connects to different sides of me. Cool, that's a topic. Or, this is an essay about how a series of experiences led me to realize I want to be a doctor. Okay, first question. Second question, are the examples that you're giving in each paragraph strong, specific, and visual? Are the examples you're giving something that a camera could see? Second question, feel free to copy and paste these from the chat if you like. Also, we will follow up with these. Third question, this is kind of like a checklist for your personal statement. Is it clear what values you're trying to show? In other words, could I read your paragraph and be like, this person is committed to social justice or the environment or, being meticulous, okay? And then fourth question, are there 2 to 3 moments where you answer, so what? Moments that reveal information that's not elsewhere in your application. Okay, so that's your quick checklist for if your essay is not about challenges. But if your personal statement is writing about challenges, I would ask these different questions. First of all, is it even clear what your challenges are? Like when you look at the personal statement, could I read your personal statement and be like, now not looking at it, I can tell you back what the challenges are. Sometimes students leave it kind of vague. So are the challenges clear? Second, are they compelling? Like, do they make for a standout essay? It could be that you've written in such a way that we don't understand why the challenges really mattered. If, for example, you wrote about getting a bad grade, did you give us a sense of why that was such a big deal for you? I don't think, by the way, that's a great topic for a personal statement, but in short, whatever your challenge is, do you give us a sense of why that challenge mattered to you? Next, is it clear what the impacts of the challenge were on you? So when you read your essay, is there a moment where you're like, based on these challenges, whatever they were, here are the specific impacts that it had on me in my life? And that should probably be about 1/3 of the essay, okay? In the middle of your essay, did you clarify what you did to overcome the challenges? And then finally, do you clarify in the end, final paragraphs, probably what you learned from the experience. Let me just recap those really quickly for the challenges-based essay. Are the challenges clear? Are the effects clear? Is what I did clear? Is what I learned clear? Challenges, effects, what I did, what I learned. Okay. On the non-challenges side, is the topic clear? Specific, strong visual examples? Are my values clear? And do I have a few so what moments of insight? That's a lot of content, Tom. I think I'm going to not do all the bonus tips right now. I think I'm going to do them only as relevant. And by the way, y'all, I know this is a lot of content. I wrote this up in a blog post that we will share with y'all in a follow-up email. So if your brain is just like, then don't worry about it. Just let all that wash over you. And now take a breath.
Ooh, that was beautiful.
My intro
probably actually with my mic being so hot, that was probably like a thunderous.
No, it was great. My intro, in case you are curious and we've never met before, I'm the college essay guy. I spend 8 hours a day thinking and writing about personal statements in college essays. And I started this whole thing, and now we've got more people, and it's really nice. And I have a podcast if you're interested. And yeah, that's it. That's my intro. Tom, tell us about you, and then tell us about how to make admission officers' lives easier.
Well, one of my favorite lines, Ethan, that was featured on social media way back in the day was, I may not be the college essay guy, but I'm a college essay guy. It's a reminiscent of the Dos Equis man, which you youngins, y'all probably don't know, but maybe you do. I'm oftentimes very surprised by the depth of knowledge that Gen Z possesses. And I'm sure there's lots of counselors and parents possibly tuning in as well who can relate. But beyond being a college essay guy, my actual name is Tom Campbell. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm College Essay Guy's community manager. I've been working full-time with College Essay Guy since June. And Ethan and I actually met kind of like, this was one of our main areas of connection, was on a webinar jam way back when, I think in May or April of 2021, where I talked all about highly selective admissions. And that was back when I was at Pomona College in Southern California. So prior to working at College Essay Guy, I worked as a college counselor at Lakeside School in Seattle, Washington, as an admissions officer at Pomona College, and my alma mater, the College of the Holy Cross. So definitely in my time in the college admissions world, I've seen over, I think I was doing the math the other day for a podcast for SCORE, and I think it's somewhere north of 4,000 applications. I was like the primary person reading through it. So I've seen a lot. And I think part of what I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking with you all today, in the spirit of it's getting down to the wire for many students with the November 1st deadline. There are lots of, I'm sure, thoughts and feelings swirling around in your pretty little heads. But I think a few things that I like to spend some time talking about during this stage are the small little tweaks that can make what I would argue are a big difference in terms of making your admissions officer's life a little easier. So that is definitely the lens that I'm bringing this information to you through. And what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to share my own version of, I have a Common App account that if I was to submit it to various schools, I guess I could have a lot of fun with it, and you could see these sample essays that I put together, and I could see if anyone wants to take me, but that would probably be fraud, so we're not going to do that. But for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to share my screen and show you a little bit of do's and don'ts in filling out your Common application that really center on little formatting tweaks and ways to kind of present yourself in a way that positions you in your best light. So, and this is something that it may seem kind of like not that big of a deal, but from someone who used to read like 60 to 70 applications a day, you would start to notice little formatting irks that would kind of grind your gears as you came across them on a student's application. And I think the reason is because sometimes students don't really know what the user experience is like of someone actually reading through file after file after file. And when you see one giant big block paragraph of a Common Application essay, all the amazing insights and the vulnerability and all the area, your craft, your core values, all the amazing goodness that you have spent, hours and weeks and maybe years putting together, it can just purely by the way that you formatted it and presented it, that meaning can be lost in translation just in the way that it's being presented to someone on the other end. So these are small little practical hacks that will really not take you any time at all to ensure that you are putting your best foot forward, and it's not pandering, it's positioning. You know, that you're not going so far as saying like, I'm going to name my firstborn child Princeton. That's a beautiful gender neutral name and a great way to honor a lovely institution in, New Jersey. However, that veers into the line of pandering and trying to like put together an application that an admissions officer may want and knocking down at their door. These are small little tweaks that pretty much anyone who's reading it, no matter who they are, is going to be thinking in the back of their mind, thank you for presenting this cleanly and beautifully. Wow, chef's kiss. So without further ado, I'm going to share my Common App sample. So the first thing I wanted to share was the activities list. So there are a few do's and don'ts that I kind of want to share with you a little bit with this. I'm sure for many of you who are, going through the Common App right now, this page probably looks pretty familiar. And you may not know this particular feature, but if you see on the top right corner, the preview, that is actually a really great way to see all the text that you've written into these neat little boxes with different character limits and different, your organization name, your position. If you preview it, you'll get a sense for kind of what it looks like to an admissions officer. So I'm going to do some kind of do's and don'ts with activities by way of example here. So the first one, this is not as much of a formatting tip as it is more of a shameless plug yet again for what Ethan just described when it comes to the epic verbs and really kind of leveling up your description so that it's not just really saying the bare bones and you're really kind of getting at actually what you did and what you took away and what you learned. So as you can see, these top two activities, it looks clean. And the first one was an intern at a hospital, saw doctors treat patients. I would assume that that is how you spend your time as you are an intern at a University of Brunswick biology department, right? Or health lab, whatever it may be. So the next one, though, kind of gives you a sense of how to expand that a little bit, maximize your 150 characters, and really kind of get a sense for the values that you've gained here. With the second one, the basketball example, this is one where, so the first two, this student is probably a little more comfortable being pretty literal and direct with their takeaways and what they've learned. But I also like to give students permission to possibly level up and be a little playful with the way that you format these activities and descriptions. So for the first one, for example, here, basketball power forward on Brunswick High School's boys varsity basketball team. You could write attended practices and played basketball, but that's pretty much what basketball entails. So maybe we could use that space a little more creatively to expand on maybe some ways that you particularly contributed to your team. So again, there's nice personality here. It's formatted cleanly, and things look all overall really, they're very pleasing to the eye. And you kind of take a step away and you read it and you think, gee, like that was a nice little change of pace for me as a reader. Now, the last one, though, kind of really leans into what I would say is a little bit of the formatting tips that I have. So these two activities at the bottom, the art activities, basically they're the exact same activity, but as you can see, one is written in a way that really isn't giving you a whole lot. And also you look at it and you're kind of just like, what am I looking at? It just kind of shoots out at you as a rummy on the board, slap on the table, and you kind of don't really, aren't able to really process the substance behind actually the way that you've spent your time as an oil painter and student with the Casco Bay Art Coalition. So this is, I think, a good example of where not to get into the weeds with things. So in the first example that you have here, head oil painter, there's kind of a lot of acronyms and lingos and abbreviation that I don't really kind of know exactly what you're doing. I get that you're doing something with painting. You seem to have certain color hues that you're liking a little better. Maybe you switch a little bit to using acrylics on certain days. But altogether, this description is kind of just the way it's being presented purely is really jumbled. It's really hard to read. And again, the meaning that you're putting forward is really kind of getting lost in translation. But if you are to kind of, just by the formatting alone on the bottom part, like by putting cleanly your title and, using sentence case for your title, definitely I think makes it a little bit cleaner than even just putting Casco Bay Artist Coalition. Even when it's lowercase, it still just doesn't seem quite as like official or polished or clean. And just by doing your positions and then the years that you held them and a sentence case description of that particular club or organization, you're really kind of giving yourself a huge boost in terms of positioning yourself in the best light possible from a formatting perspective. And the content here is also really a lot cleaner and more value driven, and kind of shows your biggest takeaways that you got from this. But moving on from the activities list is the writing section. So if you were to kind of look down at my personal statement section here, and I'm like, gee, I wrote this amazing personal statement. It's about laptop stickers on a laptop. I didn't actually write that essay, but if you've attended any CEG webinars in the past, this is an essay that we frequently use as a great example of how to put together a montage essay that shows lots of different values and sides of yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy from my trusty Google Doc my laptop essay, and it's all, what I'll do though is kind of just, before I actually show what it looks like in the Common App, I want to show you, I'm sure many of you are using Google Docs, wisely enough, to put together your college application. So if I was to pull up my trusty Google, say this is my almost done doc, and I have, my great essay here, I've done the scan of it, I've seen that my values are here, there's amazing insights that I put together, it's well crafted, it's all the things, right? And I really kind of wanted to emphasize these different stickers that are part of who I am, and I want to bold them because they're my theme. My laptop is a passport, and the stickers represent all the things about me, right? So I'm bolding these intentionally from a formatting perspective because I really want to draw attention to them being kind of the way that I've structured my entire piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to put it right into the Common App, and we'll see what happens. And I cannot tell you the amount of times that I have come across a essay or a common application that does this. And again, it may seem like a small thing. It may seem like I'm being kind of just whiny and complainy. But when you're an admissions officer and you're reading so many files a day, just having a small thing like that really just does not put you in the best of moods. And you kind of want to be in a good mood when you're, evaluating these candidacies. So going back to the Common App, I copied my text from my Google Doc, and I'm going to paste it into the box that they have available for me. So here we go. I'm going to paste it. Boom, great. And if I wanted to just press continue and move on to the next section, I could very well do that because I know my essay was very well formatted, right? Great. Okay, let's do actually preview and see if what I believe actually happened is the reality. Let's see. The prompt that I chose is bolded and everything else is bolded, and all the bolding that I did of the stickers is not preserved. Eek, not great. Also, there's kind of these giant spaces between paragraphs, but when I did them, they were nice, artful, subtle spaces. So this again kind of underscores the importance of small formatting things that make a big difference in having the readability of your file be the biggest takeaway. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these spaces because clearly they were not actually needed because it, was a giant chasm between my different paragraphs. And let's see. I'm also going to use the trusty little tools that are built into Common App's own box holder. And I'm going to unbold this beautiful piece of work and bold the stickers as I intended it to be so. And if we go back up to preview, wow, look at that. Beautiful. It's smooth, it's clean, the paragraphs are nice. It just totally gives it a nicer, cleaner look that really does let the words speak for themselves and land in a great, positive, impactful way. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is the additional information section. So Ethan talked a little bit about this and how you can use this for lots of different reasons. You can use this to expand on personal circumstances that you don't feel like you had a chance to explain otherwise in your application. You can use this to expand on activities that you felt like, gee, I created this amazing apple picking club. I'm just, again, like Ethan was taking inspiration from games, I'm taking inspiration from this bowl next to me. I created this amazing apple picking club, and it wasn't just about Macintosh, it's about all the different apples that are out there, and there was a lot of detail that went into it. You kind of maybe want to expand a little bit on that. Great. Use the additional information to do that. But again, there's going to be a few things I think when you format it will really kind of put you in the best light when it comes to having it be clean and readable. So what I did earlier was I put together a little section here, and I copied it in from Google Docs just like I did before. And again, you're going to want to make sure just to spend a little bit of time unbolding the things that you've done. That if the header is supposed to be bold, great, it's bolded there. And the other pieces, not as much. Put the position here. And by just doing that small little tweak, it made it a one big block paragraph a lot more. Oh, that's the essay. But I think actually if I go further down to the additional info, it will show up. Yeah. Makes it a really, really clean for someone to kind of get a sense for, A, because you bulleted it, which makes it a huge difference than necessarily a block of text when it comes to additional information explanations. And it just kind of really allows your reader to kind of move through it smoothly, easily, and get your key takeaways as quickly and as readily as possible. Another kind of little formatting thing that I like to encourage some students to do, you can format this, additional info section any way you want. Sometimes, say just like on the Common App activities section, there you may want to do like an academic section, and it has all additional academic accolades that you want to expand on, or maybe you have a community service activities that you want to expand on. Even just doing something like this and having there be like a header to kind of separate out your ideas. Even that small organization piece there can also just really help give your additional info session a sense of polish, a sense of cleanness, and really kind of keep the admissions officer liking you from the beginning to the very end. So that was a little bit of my Common App demo there. Hopefully it was helpful, little tiny tweaks.
I mean, that was real practical. I hope that's useful, y'all. I mean, I if I was doing it, I'd be like, yeah, thanks. Now I know formatting. I want to zoom back and talk a little bit about managing stress as it relates to what we just talked about. So sometimes I think through this process, we get real stressed out and we're like, should I X, Y, Z? And the thing that I want y'all to say, if I could like create a little avatar of like Ethan and Tom, like whispering in your ear, but we're on the same, like we're on the good side shoulder. It would be saying my avatar, maybe Tom, you would have yours would be saying something different, but mine would be whispering to you, focus on what you can control. And the reason I want you to focus on what you can control is that there are so many things in this process that you can't control. You can't control, for example, what they're going to think. You can't control ultimately whether or not you get in. But what you can control is, did you show all of the information in a way that is relatively easy to read? Are there other pieces of you that you could include? Is there more information you could give in your activities list? These are all things connected to the resources that we just shared that you can control and that you can do stuff about. This also applies to like testing. You might be like, I don't know if I should. First of all, if you're not sure if you should submit your test scores or not, talk to your counselor. They're going to have good advice on that. Based on students who've applied for this school from your school. But you can break that down into like manageable pieces. Like, what can you control? Well, are you going to submit your score or not? Or are you going to test or not? Some of you are looking ahead at like November, are you going to take the test or not? And then there's another question before that. Are you going to prep or not? So all these are things that you can, like, there are different decision points along the way. So if you can break whatever the thing down is into manageable steps and then go, can I take action on this or not? And if it's something that you can't take action on, let go of the mental taffy of like, obsessing over it. I know that's easier said than done. So that's the first one. Tom, maybe I'll ask you at the end what your mini little avatar would say. After November 1st, so you're probably working on, if you're on this session, early deadlines. One of the best ways, I think, to reduce stress is to make sure you have a balanced college list. And by balanced, I mean, you're probably aiming high for a school that is maybe selective, maybe not. Like maybe you're using your early action, early decision to a school that you have a good chance of getting into. But one of the best ways to reduce stress is to find schools that you like and that you can get into. And ideally, in some cases, that will give you money. And there's a resource that we created that will basically help you find those schools. So let me just share it with you once more. It's this one. college list here. I'm literally Googling it right now. I had it ready, but I just wanted to also, apparently I wanted to Google this. This is our resource on that. And it will give you specific things that you can do to find schools. You don't need to do this right this second because you're probably, working on the application right now. But I find that it's one of the best ways to reduce stress overall in this process. By the way, if you're watching this and you're a junior, good for you being ready. You do not need to worry about Common App formatting just yet. Really, one of the things you can be thinking about is like, what are you looking for in a school? So see blog post that I just shared. Pausing for a second, Tom, is there anything in terms of like in the realm of like things that could potentially help students reduce stress that you would add?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest things to keep in mind, and one of the biggest seeds that you can plant in your head right now, is to recognize, and I kind of got at this a little bit, your admissions reader is going through your application very quickly. And I think it's important to be mindful of that because so often, I think at this stage, students can veer into the category of overthinking when it comes to analyzing and critiquing and looking at every single word in their essays, both their personal essay and their supplemental essay, and really trying to rack their brains. Is the admissions officer going to get this deep meaning that I'm putting forward? Chances are, if you're trying to really create a nuanced, artful, deep symbolism that would require someone to kind of read it and analyze it and be in a Socratic seminar and a round table with other people, it probably is, again, going to get lost in translation a little bit. So I know, I mentioned that before from a formatting perspective, but from a content perspective, I think it's really important to not get so in the weeds and so hyper-focused on analyzing and critiquing every single word that you're having there and asking in the back of your head, gee, are they going to get this? Are they going to make this connection to this thing before? I think it's important to kind of make sure that as you're reading through the essay, it's put together in a way that someone can get these key insights, can see your values really clearly from the way that you've shown them with the examples that you give, and to not get too bogged down and too in the weeds of critiquing every single word that you write, because the more you do that, honestly, you're going to look at the clock and be like, gee, that was half of my evening, and I still have lots of other things that I need to do in my life beyond college applications. So I think remembering, again, the speed at which people read through these is really important, because if you're thinking that there is a deep whole college class that is being dedicated to your application and they're dissecting it and pulling apart every single little word that you've written, I think that is energy that could be transferred to something that's so much more meaningful, so much more, that will keep you so much more balanced, keep you so much more positive and afloat as you kind of navigate through this process. That's probably one of the biggest pieces of tips that I like to give this time of year.
So good. Yeah. And the way that you'll know that, if you're listening and you're like, wait, but how do I know which parts need the most work? Create this almost done doc, and then go, okay, and I'm going to get to the personal statement in just a second. Go, okay, is my activities list, did I up-level it? That's the low-hanging fruit. Like, you can use that epic list of activities list verbs, and you can up-level your activities list in less than an hour. Okay. Ask yourself, and we're going to share in the again, follow-up, in my additional info section, is there stuff that I want to add? If not, great, don't worry about it. Okay. On your supplemental essays, do those need the most work? Because it could be that you're like, my personal statement is pretty well locked down. I feel like my supplemental essays are weaker. How will you know that? I mean, actually, one way that you could know that is we've got a student group, a Discord group that Tom is a big part of, that if you wanted a writing partner, someone that you could meet up with to be like, hey, will you give a scan to my almost done doc and see how you think I'm doing? That's a quick plug for the Discord group. We'll share a link to that in just a few minutes. I said I'd talk a little about the personal statement. How do you know if your personal statement is quote unquote done? Once you've asked those questions that I showed earlier, we've got this thing called the Great College Essay Test, which basically has a little PDF worksheet that you can work through, and you can ask yourself, for example, is my essay revealing core values? Like, can I name 4 to 5 of the author's core values? And you could ask your writing partner this. Do I show vulnerability? Like, is the essay truly personal? Am I showing things that aren't obvious from other parts of my application? For example, in terms of so what moments, do I have moments that actually are revealing, new information or that could potentially surprise the reader? And then craft, is it clear that I've revised this over several drafts? If you can answer yes for sure to all those, then I would say your personal statement is done or getting close to done. If you're doubting that and you feel like, I'd love to have an extra eye, we have an awesome student group that you can, take advantage of. and get a writing partner, get an outside eye, an outside opinion, but then equip them with this and be like, hey, will you look at this based on this great college essay test? How am I doing? The other thing you can do is, and this is the only thing that I'm not going to share a link to, because this is from one of my courses. But we've got this thing called a value scan, and it's pretty simple to do. But essentially, if you want to make sure your application is doing its job, it looks like this. So essentially, once you've got your almost done doc, you can go like this. You've got your, we've got the personal statement here. You can go through and you can highlight moments in your personal statement where you feel like you're revealing those core values, and just put them in a Google Doc, and then just make comments. Hard work, family. This part where the student says, I became my own teacher, shows autonomy and independence, etc. And you can do this not just with your personal statement, but also with your activities list. Show the different sides of you that are being revealed. What are those different values? This will give you a good sense of, if you're not able to do this on your activities list, chances are you're not revealing a ton of information. Okay. Same with your additional info. If you can't do this in a lot of different places, then chances are you're not revealing stuff that could help the reader make a decision about your candidacy. Okay. So that's sort of value scan, big picture, a way to make sure that your application, and if you do that and you go through the whole thing and you're like, you know what, I'm revealing so many different sides of myself through this, I think I'm pretty good. That's going to give you a good sense of it. Or you can also have somebody else help you with that. We're going to kick it over to Q&A. We're about 15 minutes away from our time today. Tom, I thought the format that we could do is maybe just trade one for one, and you pick one and answer it, and then I'll pick one and answer it. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Let's do it then.
Totally. Yeah.
Do you have one, or should I grab the first one?
Well, I'm just looking at the doc right now, and Kenzie asked a great question. Is this helpful for exchange students? I hope it was helpful. So that's one question there. But the next one from Manasi is, can you include activities that you have applied for but not yet completed within the same organization? And what I think that you're meaning is, if you have an activity that you're planning on doing, can you still put it in your activities list? And the answer is yes. I've never heard of an admissions officer, never in my time have I ever, after the student has been admitted, be like, hey, that thing that you said you were going to do in 12th grade, but it was in the spring semester, did you end up doing it? Admissions officers are going to take your word for your plan that you have in place, and the way that the rest of your year is mapping out in your head, and the applications that you're putting in for, and the positions that you're trying to gain in certain clubs and organizations. I think totally putting that in is fine. The anticipated way that you're spending your time, it's great to reflect that some way in your application, and the activities list is a great place to do that.
Tanya asks, what are your best tips for the Why This College essay? Ooh, I'm so glad you asked, Tanya, because I have the most epic guide on that. I'm going to throw it in the chat right now. This is my epic guide to the Why Us essay. It's got, if you skim it, it will take you 5-8 minutes to read, but there's a YouTube video that I recommend that's the 20-minute version that'll walk you through pretty much everything. The main takeaway, if you're I'm not going to watch a whole YouTube video on that, is you want to make sure that two things, actually. One is make sure that every sentence in there is a sentence that only you could write. In other words, if you write a sentence and you're like, oh, someone else could have totally written this sentence, delete it and see if you can make it more specific, especially with the really short ones that are only 200 words. The second thing is make sure that whatever opportunity that you're talking about at the school, I love, Northwestern's specific thing. So for example, I love that Northwestern offers students the opportunity to create their own theater through this theater group. Connect it back to you. Why is that a big deal for you? Because they know that that's awesome. They have that. They're like, yes, we think that's awesome too. What does it have to do with you? Because you're trying to demonstrate fit, and make sure you're doing that for almost every single time, if you can, that you're mentioning something cool about the school. This is not a why is the school awesome? It's why are you and the school a great fit? Tom, your turn.
Okay. So next one I see that I think is a great one is from Isabella, and is descriptive language / imagery important in a personal essay? Is there a point where it can become too flowery? Isabella, this is such a good question, and one that I think a lot of students have on their mind. And from my perspective, I'm actually going to drop a link to a academic study in the chat, as thrilling as that is. Y'all are applying to college, so you're going to get a whole lot of experience with this type of writing. But essentially, this paper, I think, really kind of underscores something that this is a shout out to Lynn, who's one of our amazing essay coaches extraordinaire, who has done so many great things at College Essay Guy. But this is one resource that she often shares with students and families when she gets the question, am I going to sound smart enough in my writing? And this essay or this research study talks all about how it actually can do the opposite when you're kind of cramming in your essay with words that seem smart, and it's kind of like you're flexing how great you are, intelligent you are. Your transcript tells that story. The classes that you've taken tell that story. The way that your teachers and counselors and community members talk about you in their recommendations, all those are great ways that communicate and honor the amazing intellect that you bring to your future community. The essay does not necessarily need to be the place for that. I think focusing on the things that Ethan has mentioned, the insights, your values, being vulnerable if it's appropriate and it makes sense for your story, and putting it together with a nice craft, wrapping it all up in a nice bow with a cool theme or with a metaphor that you want to have kind of be woven through your essay in some creative and interesting way. But kind of really getting bogged down in tons of deep, vivid, the iridescent light flooding through my window that doth, wake the birds is really actually probably not going to do as many favors as you think it is. So I'd say those types of imageries and flowery language are ones to, when you see that and you're almost done, Doc, that those are taking up a lot of your 650 words, those are the things to cut down, and the insights and the connections about those images and what they actually mean to you are the things to expand on, typically more than not.
To link it back to what I was just talking about, if you highlight a thing that's beautifully written, the value might be like, attention to detail or like good writer. And if you are continually doing that, it's like you're just using the same values again and again. So to Tom's point, delete some of those, use that word space to show other sides of yourself. Let's talk about stigmatized topics a little bit. Tanya asks, what advice do you have for a student who might want to write about a religious experience or from a religious perspective? And a couple other people asked about mental health issues. Now, the reason I'm grouping these together is both of these are things that people are like, I feel like if I write about this in the wrong way, it could be bad. So let's first talk about religion. If you're going to write about religion, the danger is, I think, is the reader going to feel like separate from me or feel like I'm trying to convert them to my religion? Now, certainly that's not the point of your personal statement. The purpose of your personal statement is to demonstrate the skills, qualities, values, and interests that you're going to bring with you to a college campus. So if that's our goal, the question that I would say to any student who's considering writing about religious experience or volunteering at a church or a temple, etc., is to ask yourself, what values am I focusing on that are ultimately secular values, meaning values that everybody can get down with? So it could be that you're writing about, for example, volunteering in Sunday school. Well, my question for you, if you're writing about this, is, well, what did you learn about, for example, inclusion? Or what did you learn about, vulnerability or productivity? Because these are the qualities that you're going to take with you and apply on the college campus no matter what you do. So if writing about a religious experience, what are the values that we can all get down with? And I just put that link in the chat. Second, mental health. Mental health is tricky. And I think that it's tricky because for a reason that might surprise you, is I think it's just become, especially during the pandemic, so common to write about. So I think it's more difficult to stand out with a topic, if it's a personal statement topic, on mental health. So that's the first reason that I would suggest potentially consider other topics. Now, if you're like, Ethan, this is what I've been working on and this is what I'm writing and I'm 2 weeks away, and that's what you want to do, great. I'm going to give you some advice in just a second, because it could be like not great for your mental health to totally revamp your essay right now. So I'm going to give you advice in just a second. But if you've got some time and energy and you're going between two topics and one of them relates to mental health and one of them is on something else, I want to encourage you to consider using the something else for your personal statement to show another side of you, and then taking the description of your whatever mental health challenge you've been through and consider putting it in an additional information section. And you can do it in a pretty straightforward way. For example, during the pandemic, what was the challenge? I experienced anxiety and, in some cases, bouts of depression. What was the effect? As a result, I found myself staying in more, and wanting to, read more than anything. So what were the effects? So challenge, what were the effects? What did you do about it? I tried doing X, didn't necessarily work, until I found Y, and that seemed to work a little bit better. And then I found Z, and that was even better. So what are the things that you did to improve whatever the challenge and the effects were? And then what did you learn from the experience? Ultimately, what I learned is, and then what was that? And I feel like just exploring that would be something that you could put in the additional information section, and you could kind of have that part of your story told. And then you can use your personal statement for whatever else. Now, if you're like, no, Ethan, no, let me clarify it. I'm actually writing about this. How do I write about it in a way that's good? The thing that I just said to you is actually going to probably be a pretty good structure for you. So clarify the challenges and the effects in the first third, what you did about it in the middle, and what you learned in the end. I think oftentimes the reason that students don't want to write about this, they feel like they'll be defined by it. Well, if you spend, of your 650 word budget, if you spend 450 words talking about mental health, they're going to be like, oh, this is a lot about mental health. And I worry maybe that the reader might feel like, we might not have the resources for this student, or is this student really going to thrive on our campus? Remember, the purpose of this application is to demonstrate your skills, qualities, values, and interests. This is not an essay about mental health. This is about how a mental health journey, how this mental health challenge led you to do some really cool stuff that allowed you to develop some insights that are going to serve you in college. So this is not an essay about mental health. It's about how mental health issues were a springboard for growth, learning, discovery. That's what this essay is about. That's what college admission officers want to read about. Tom, back to you.
Well said, and snapping and clapping, exactly all the things, agreed. So I see a question from Lewis, which is, do you consider supplemental essays more important than the personal essay? What should you try to convey in the supplemental essays that would make you seem like a good fit for that particular college? So in terms of which one is more important, the personal essay or the supplemental essay, I think the better question to ask is kind of what are the role of the two different pieces of writing that you're putting forward. So personal statement, I would argue that it's really important because any college that you apply to that uses a common application, the vast majority of them are going to ask for a personal statement as part of your application. So that's kind of where you can really summarize something in your life or multiple vignettes in your life that have been particularly meaningful to you, bringing forward insights that are motivating your life now and what you want to do in the future. Whatever that story may be, there's so many different ways to do it, as we've hopefully illustrated to you. So the personal statement has its own role in the process. But I think the one thing to clarify is that the colleges didn't put together the questions for the personal statement. That's just what the Common App puts together, and they're general enough that pretty much any story about yourself can fall into typically one of the categories that is listed there, or the topic of your choice, which is always the last one. The supplemental essays, the role of those is that those were designed and written specifically by colleges, typically to either get at certain institutional priorities that they're trying to be mindful of. So if they are looking for students who are thinking about how they are going to contribute to their community, they may have put a question in their application that was specifically tailored to try and generate responses that could have them envision, gee, where can I plug Tom or Ethan into this college campus based on what they're sharing in this essay, and what information are they giving me to show me that I can make a case for them. The supplemental essays really are written with the college's own priorities and things that they're looking for in students in mind. So when you're writing those, definitely, I think my biggest tips to students are to make sure that you really understand the college that you're applying to. Take a look at their mission statement. If there's a vision statement, if you look at any of our supplemental essay blog guides, which cue the link, Ashley, if you're still helping us out there, that's a great way. Basically, almost all the blogs that we do for any of the 80 or so colleges that College Essay Guy has written supplemental essay guides for. If you go to the top of pretty much any of those blogs, we always clarify to take a look at the mission statement, if there's a vision statement, if there's a strategic plan. That usually kind of gives you a sense of the types of students that particular college is looking for. And that can usually give you a little bit of a sense for the types of anecdotes and experiences to possibly share in your responses. So they both have different roles. I wouldn't necessarily say that one is more important than the other, but definitely for schools that are asking supplemental essay questions and want those responses, they ask those for a reason. So making sure to spend equal amount of time and attention on them, and especially if it's a why us essay where they want you to talk about that particular college, using specific classes, professors, research opportunities that you're eager to be involved in, clubs or organizations that you really want to dive into and make waves in. And talking about, I think one final tip that I'll put with supplemental essays, particularly around ones where you're trying to prove your fit for that particular college, you should also make sure to be including why you. What do you have that you're going to take to the next level at that college? Like, building off my great experience founding a nonprofit at my school, I'm going to take that to the next level by joining X club at Tom University, right? That's kind of a great way to use in one simple sentence. You're saying, hey, I already have experience in this. I've dabbled in this. I'm going to take it to all these new heights when I get to your campus. And you can quote me on that. Don't include the last part, but definitely the other previous part of that hopefully gives you a sense for the type of things to include in those writing samples.
Vanita just asked, should you stay away from common topics, or is it okay if you write about those topics in a creative way? Vanita, I'm so glad you asked. So one of the things that Tom and I are going to be doing in 48 hours is we're leading a course that's literally called how to stand out with common personal statement topics. So we'd love for you to join us. We're going to talk about things like, what is the difference between a common and an overused personal statement topic? And three of the topics that we're going to address. Number one is we're going to address like the sports essay. And how do you stand out with that one? We're also going to address the essay that is written about somebody else who is like not the student. My inspiring grandparent or family member or coach. And then we're going to talk about the challenges essay. Students who are writing about challenges, sometimes they're like, oh, I'm worried that it's going to like define me or I'm going to blend in. And we're going to show you some things that'll help you, not blend in basically. The course is good though for students who are writing about all kinds of common topics. So we'd love for you to join. Again, it's pay what you can. It's happening on Saturday. It'll be a party. So thanks for asking, Vanita. That reminded me to remind you all about that. And there's also, again, there's a version for counselors that's really practical. And we've got handouts and stuff. So thanks for reminding us that. We've got a minute. I'm going to stay for a couple extra minutes, Tom. You don't have to.
Well, I was going to go through some rapid fire questions.
I love rapid fire. Let's do it. Go.
Yeah, I love rapid fire. Me too. Okay, so Janice asks, does the additional information section have to be as creative as the Common App? I believe you probably mean your Common App personal statement in your essay, and the answer is no. The additional information can be a lot more literal, a lot more to the point, bulleted, facts, ways that you put together an organization, additional context about a period in your life that was challenging or dip in grades, whatever it may be. You can definitely be pretty to the point and pretty literal. And the same level of creativity and craft and panache is definitely not expected. Next one is, do you recommend going to interviews? From Nikki. Definitely, if a college offers them, I do recommend doing them because typically they really cannot, for the most part, there's been very few instances where an interview actually hurt a student's chances. Usually it's a reiteration of the things that you are probably mentioning in your application. And it's just another touch point for you to potentially share things about yourself that maybe you weren't able to share in your application. So if you're comfortable doing interviews and you don't mind talking with a stranger that you've never met before, either on Zoom or in person, I highly recommend them. And if colleges offer them, I think you should take advantage of them. Another one that I saw, which I think is pretty quick, is do you need to prove what you have done in your activities list? Misha, that's a great question. You do sign when you submit your common application that everything that you've written is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. It's not necessarily a legal document, but you do sign off saying that you, to the best of your abilities, you believe that what you've included in this application is true. So colleges are expecting that you're honoring that agreement and what you're putting forward is truthful. I wouldn't say that you need to be proving or corroborating or providing evidence when you enroll that is the case. So I'd say be honest, be a good human about it, and honor the achievements and things that you spent your time doing in the way that's truthful to you. And then last one is, should we put our weighted GPA or unweighted? Zainab, great question. Whatever your school listed at is the one that you want to put in. And actually putting in your GPA into your common application isn't really that important. And actually, I don't really think you even need to do it. But typically the GPA that you want to list, it depends on the school, but usually you want to use the same grading scale and weighting scale that your school typically rates at your GPA on your transcript. So that's the scale to use.
I'm going to do 3 rapid fire and then we'll call it. So my 3 rapid fire questions are, let's see. I have an award that I'm awaiting approval. Can I include this? Yes, Monica. Just say include it and then say anticipated in parentheses. Another one is, how do I make my COVID essay compelling? If you Google COVID college essay guy, Shawana, you'll see a whole guide to that. Someone else asked, this is like now 4 questions, but someone asked, any resource for international students? I just put a link to a whole hub of resources for international students. And the last question will be...
Wait, I have one more. Can I do one more?
Ooh, you can do the last one. Do it.
Okay. So it's any tips for why this major essay when you're applying as undeclared? And Kay, I'm really glad you asked this question because I feel like a lot of people can relate to it. I do have tips. So if you are writing a why major essay or kind of to talk about your intellectual curiosities in some capacity, but you are undeclared and you are not ready to kind of make that commitment right away, what I really emphasize you to think about is you can write about the things that you're currently at this point in time, the things that you really enjoy, the things that you're thinking, gee, I like spending my time in this area and this area. You really kind of want to give someone a window of that. And remember that you're not locked to what you're writing down necessarily. At a lot of schools, of course, there are some schools where you apply to a particular program. And for those schools, you kind of have to make up your mind because there's not an option to be undeclared. But for schools where you can be undeclared, but they do want to get a little bit of a sense of what you're interested in studying, I think the best way to approach this is to you can come across as undeclared, but you don't want to come across as apathetic, and you don't want to come across as I haven't really spent any time thinking about this. I'll figure it out when I get there. If that's kind of the summary that you're putting forward in that essay, you're not really answering the question and not really showing that you've thought a little bit about the things that you enjoy spending your time doing from an intellectual perspective. So while your major doesn't necessarily need to be clearly like, I've done this research and this internship and it's directly related to molecular biology, and that's why I'm studying this, there are students who have had those experiences and they write about them, and that's all well and good. But if you're a student who you're like, oh, I actually find myself like in English class really getting lost in magical realism, and I could potentially see myself veering into that, but it could be something broader in humanities because I also really like to see stories in history that are real life stories that I can learn about and take away from. Kind of as long as I'd say you center your essay and your response on how you're checking in at this point in time in the areas that have kind of where your mind lights up, or kind of when you go on certain Wikipedia rabbit holes and you want to investigate something a little deeper, that's usually a good sense that it's somewhat of a topic that you can put forward that doesn't necessarily need to be a major explicitly, but it's, again, leaning on your curiosities, not your major case and point end of bullet point. So I'd say lean on curiosities. Don't come across as apathetic and just say you'll figure it out, because, again, you want to show that you've done some critical reflection and that you're moving through this process with a sense of your intentions and what you hope to achieve. And I think that would be my final words there.
Lovely. While you were talking, I put a link to our Why Major guide in there as well. Thanks, friends. Thanks for being here, students, parents, and counselors. It's lovely to see you. And I put a link again to the Discord group. That's students only, but Tom's going to be in there like once a week at least for live sessions, for AMAs. So you can connect with him more there. And then we'd love to see some of you on the course this Saturday if you've got time and energy. Final thoughts?
My final thoughts is, I know it can be easy to overthink, but try not to overthink. In fact, actually, I'm working with a student right now who says her favorite t-shirt that she wears is "Hold on, let me overthink this." And I'd say you can wear that t-shirt for amusement, but don't have it seep into every single part of your life at this stage in your life. Make sure to take some time for banana bread, for Rummy on the board, for some Dominion, whatever your game is. Make time for those. Lean on your village. Lean on people for support when things are feeling like it's just really overwhelming. You need a second set of eyes. People are here to support you, and whether they're in your immediate household or they're us at College Essay Guy, like lean on your village. They're out there, and we wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, beautifully put. Thanks, Tom. And thanks, friends. We'll see you soon. Bye.